welcome to Late Night with Monica Price. I'm delighted to say that I'm joined by best-selling author Sabrina George, whose book, The Debtologist, is out, best-selling on Amazon, and I'm delighted to say that she's with me this evening. Hello, Sabrina.
Hello, Monica. Thanks for having me on your fabulous programme.
Thank you so much for joining me. Now, of course, debt is on a lot of people's minds at the moment, Sabrina, so it was rather apt, I thought, to have you on the show, because tell everyone just a little bit about your story, because if they haven't heard of you and your book, it's written from a personal experience, isn't it?
Yes, I mean, when I say people are in debt, I qualify that with people with a long history of debt. I've been through 4 recessions since I stopped incurring any further debt, which is my bottom line. And I've always got richer. You know, things have got better for me because I worked, you know, on these principles. And what I find terribly sad is I see people who go, well, in good times you were in debt, in bad times you were in more debt, and then in good times you were still in debt. There's a continuum to float down to the bottom until things get so extreme that, you know, they either kill themselves, they go into bankruptcy, they just have horrible lives. And that was me until I started realizing that there was something in my behavior that needed me to be in debt.
And was it something, when you felt that sort of need to spend all the time, what sort of things were you spending your money on, Sabrina?
Well, mine was quite, it wasn't very obvious and I was very convincing. So I didn't have any credit card debt. I had bank overdrafts. But what I would do is I would go and buy a property somewhere I never went, knew nothing about. I would get an agent in to manage the property who was notorious in the area for being really rubbish. I would sign up. I remember I signed up for this beautiful Victorian workshop. I didn't need a workshop. I just thought it's lovely. So I'll just sign on the lease. And that was a big mess. I also made sure that I was never in any career options or job choices where I'd make real money. You know, it wasn't, to be honest, I don't really know. It was this haze of
Yes.
I'll do this job, I'll pay that off, and then something will happen.
And when did it start for you, Sabrina? When did you kind of get onto this feel where you were out of control with your spending?
I think it started in childhood with pocket money. You know, I think it was always completely out of balance. And I take not full responsibility because a child doesn't really have it, but I own the fact that I was always in a state of no connection between what I spent and what I had. It was always out of kilter.
It's very brave of you to come on the show tonight and talk about it, Sabrina, because other people, I think, are going to resonate with what you're saying, because, you know, it's so quick and so easy nowadays, isn't it, to become in debt without really fully understanding what that phrase actually means.
I completely agree, and that's why I call it a sort of illness of vagueness and fantasy and fairy tale world. And when people come to me, which I've had to stop doing because I'm so overwhelmed, obviously, but I say to them, how much do you earn? Don't know. How much do you owe? Don't know. How did you get into debt? Don't know. Where are you going? Don't know. There's this sort of, or they will come up with something, excuse me, so fantastical. You know, I'm 53, I'm massively in debt, I've got all these responsibilities, and I think I want to be a dancer. And you're like, well, that's kind of possible, but actually, there's a degree of stuff that needs to be addressed before that might happen. And of course, it's a fantasy. They don't want to be a dancer.
No. And did it for yourself? Was it something that where you sort of, as you say, you bought property, you did classes? Were you aware at the time that what was happening to you, or were you just kind of caught along this kind of road of just having to spend your money? Was there any sort of point where you thought, actually, am I aware of what I'm doing, or you just carried on?
No, I mean, the properties came as a result of me stopping being in debt.
Right.
It was literally, it was at a ceramics exhibition with a friend of mine who, in those days, she was a Sloane Ranger. And I don't know what I was saying. And she just said, you know, you are always talking about you have, and I was like, how very dare you? You know, because I'm an artist, I'm a creative. I used to work in the theatre and such like, so I had and it was all mainstream. It never earned any money. It was all on tiny grants and whatever. And she recommended this book by a guy called Gerald Mundis, and I started reading it, and I was like, whoa, there's a lot of stuff in here that I resonate with. And I just thought, well, actually, I'm middle class, I'm, you know, reasonably bright, it can't all apply to me. I will just do little bits and just tidy up the edges, as it were. And as I started to do that, things started to revolve in my direction for the first time. And then as that was happening, the big major things that I'd signed up for, the bill started to land in my lap. And it was like this massive recession of 2000, what was it, 90? God, it was in 92, 93, somewhere around about.
93, yes.
There was this huge recession, and I was like, well, there you go. There you go. And this is what I find is a very common response of this sort of not arrogance, but sort of, oh, you see? And I just thought, well, I'll just keep going. And I just got through it without things getting worse. And I set aside, I think within weeks, 50p, which I thought was a joke, but I'll just do it to show willing, at this building society, which was about 4 or 5 miles away from me. And every Monday I'd go in there and I put 50p in, and I realized this, oh, very dare you suggest brilliant like this. Anyway, then I started going once a month with £2, and I just did it, and I did it, and I did it. And when the time came to be able to get property, that had risen to enough to pay my first deposit. And I was like, this is weird on such tiny amounts. But the main thing is I'd stopped borrowing.
And that must have made you feel so proud, Sabrina. You must have felt such a sense of, well, how did you feel? Did you feel relief, or how did you feel?
No, I think I would say the opposite, because one of my principles is the debt is over here and I'm over here, and I don't add any more to that load. So I have got to learn to live without borrowing ever again. I have got to learn to live within my means. The debt I've learned how to manage, and anybody can manage it. There's lots of basic principles you can do. However big the debt, you can negotiate with people to get that sorted. So I carried on like this, and my debt, which had got to, I didn't even know for a few years, I think it was 56,500, 56 and a half. Yes, 56 and a half, sorry, I'm very dyslexic, thousand. And I was just chipping away at it, just letting it do its thing. And I finally paid off the last bit, which was March 28th, 97. And I went into massive shock, absolutely massive shock. And I didn't connect the two. And it was like, oh my God, I'm debt free.
It must have been an amazing feeling.
It was awful.
Yeah,
that's
really. Yeah, that's very interesting. You see, from myself perspectives, and people listening, they'll think, oh, you must have felt this huge sense of relief and kind of, oh, but as you say, you didn't. That's very interesting.
It was like taking a junkie off heroin. I was just like, oh, like that. And it lasted, I think, about 5, 6 months. And I'd already started connecting it, thinking, God, what's different? What's changed? And it was, I've come out of debt. And I was in America, in New York, and I was talking to someone who was a property developer. And this was the spring of 97. And I'd been there 3 months, and I was walking around. I thought, what's happened? New York is in trouble, and nobody's talking about it. Everyone was like, no, it's great, it's great, it's great. I was like, because I used to live there, I was like, wow, all the shops are closed, all the touring exhibitions I've seen like 10 years before, the rents for property, Tribeca, everything was up for rent. I was like, what's going on? Sat next to this property guy who's a multimillionaire, and I said, you know, what's happening? And he said, maybe you and I are the only two people in the country can see something's coming down the line. He said, I'm finishing all my projects and I'm cashing out and waiting to see. And then he said, how much have you got? And at that point, I couldn't transliterate between dollars and pounds. So I said, £960,000. And he leant over and he shook my hand and he said, "Congratulations, you're a dollar millionaire." And I went,
Oh
"Oh."
my gosh.
I was
Must have
like,
been. Well,
"No."
listen, Sabrina, we've got to take a quick break now, but stay with me and we'll come back just after the break. Okay, welcome back to Monica Price, Late Night with Monica Price. I'm delighted to be joined by Sabrina George, who's talking about her book, The Debtologist. Sabrina, right, just before the break, we were talking, about how your feelings were when you actually came out of debt. And as you were saying, we were talking about the property in New York. So let's continue with that. So what did you do from that stage? What happened after that?
Well, again, I knew I'd gone into some sort of weird shock, but this time I kind of knew what it was. And I thought, no, Sabrinas do not become dollar millionaires. That can't happen. That can't happen. And I got back to London and I was telling all my friends, I was just like, apparently I'm a dollar millionaire. And they were like, so, what's the big
Yeah.
deal? And I thought, no, this is hitting me in a way that's different. So that took about 3 months. And I've since recognized it when I hit the next level or the next level or the next level. I'm sort of like, oh, and then I go, right, breathe, breathe, don't get rid of it. And it's one of my core principles with people, because I've seen it so many times with people I work with, is they get up to that point. It's a bit like an airplane going through the sound barrier. They fight and fight and fight to get there, and then woof. And
Yes.
if they don't hold that shock wave, or whatever you like to call it, they will fall down again and go and get rid of the money. So I try and get people right from the beginning to get rid of all avenues of further debt. Tear up your credit cards, agree your bank overdraft won't be increased or got rid of completely, because sometimes you've got to pay off the overdraft in
Yes.
order
Yes.
to tell your friends not to lend you any money ever again. Tell your parents, tell your family. And some people find that quite humiliating and they don't like doing it. But I'm like, just start. And as they get more and more confident that they can do without borrowing ever again, they're prepared to tell more people. Just the other day, I can't remember, I was having lunch with someone and I didn't have cash and they didn't take the card. And this friend said, I'll carry that for you. And I was like, absolutely no way. And I managed to find a way. I think I got
Yes.
another debit card, because I only use debit cards, out, and I managed to pay for it. And I thought, isn't that interesting? I'm close to the wire, and my friends who all know, because I say
Yes.
I'm working with this, they all say, let's lend you. And they're doing it with the best intentions. And I'm the one who has to say no.
Yes, and I mean, it's just telling your story. You can really get an insight, Serena, into how your journey was. And do you think nowadays it is easier for people to get into debt?
Yes and no. Now it's again, I have a distinction between secured debt, which is things like mortgages or leaseback cards, where the person who
Yes.
you owe money to gets it back, and then there's unsecured credit cards and stuff. Now, when I first started this process, you could get store cards and credit cards just like that,
You
and
can, yes.
they would have an interest rate of 50%.
Wow.
Now that's dropped quite a lot. And I would say it's always been easy. I mean, I sort of joke about it, but I'm one of those people who in middle ages, I would have gone to the market with a cow and I would have come back with beans and they would have magic. Do you know what I mean? I would always vote somehow.
Yeah.
And
And for somebody, for somebody who's struggling, because we are, there's so much talk of debt and recession at the moment in the UK and in fact globally, and of course the pandemic has caused some of that. What would you say to people that are really finding it tough at the moment? Kind of, what's your top perhaps 3 tips that you would give to someone to kind of make them realize what's going on in their lives?
There's temporary deaths, people who debt temporarily, and then there's the long-term history ones. And be honest with yourself and say, have I always been in this situation? Am I always blaming the government or the Brexit or COVID or the Queen's death? There's always something. And I did that. Okay, let's get honest. Doesn't matter. Under COVID, people were staying at home, they were getting furlough money, and they were spending like crazy on things like Amazon or Uber Eats or whatever. And when I suggested to people, well, why don't you put that money towards paying off your mortgage? Why don't you, get yourself a prudent reserve and put some money in? no, this is going to, interest rates was zero and they could have paid off all their debts. Nope, didn't want to do it. So it's a very difficult one because it has to be about self-honesty. And if you're going to carry on saying to yourself, it's not my fault, it ain't your fault. But if you can say, actually, what responsibility could I take? And one of the first things I would say is, you do not borrow again. You live on groats. You live on, I had this fantasy thing of £10 of basmati rice and soy sauce. I never got to that point, but I got to the point where I was willing to do that for 3 months. And you thought, I could live on that for 3 months. I don't want to, I won't like it. But actually, I was that desperate. I thought, right, that's what I'll set up if I should need to. I never did.
You should need it. And now moving forward, Sabrina, what have you done now? I mean, I know you help a lot of people, and a lot of people have seen your book and read your book, and I know that you work with people. How do you see your future, and how do you feel it's sort of playing out for you in helping others?
What I'd like to do is get onto bigger and bigger platforms, to be, whether it's professional speaking or whatever, but I'd also like to have something similar to you where people can ring in, because people are so embarrassed about being in debt. And I'm going, yes, I'll talk about it to cream them come, about the prattish things I did, and I did loads. But I would, that's what I would like to do, is people ring out, my name, so they can even make up a name and then tell me what they're doing, and me to be able to continually say the same things. How much debt are you in? How did you get there? Where do you want to go? And generally, just by repeating the message, and hopefully with some people who are really listening, what people can watch them progress into the lives they really want. Because I have helped people go from, zero to running their own companies, or maybe just taking a big career change, because that's another thing we do is, I hate my job and my life so much, I'll spend my way out of it. So some people, they haven't even had that much of a change in their income, but they've had a huge change in their lives, and that makes them feel prosperous, makes them feel like they have worth in the world. And I see so many, they've got I tell you the amount of financial wheeler dealers from the city I have go through. They hate what they do. And you're just like, well, we've got to start from base one and start gradually opening you up to find out what you really want to do.
Almost be honest with yourself, really, isn't it? It's just be honest with yourself. That seems to be the first sort of port of call, really.
And that's hard doing it on your own. And I admit,
very easy for us to say, very easy for us to sit here and say. But as you know from your experience, it's a very hard thing to do, isn't it?
And that's why you need to sort of change your ears into receiving things and say, what are my friends constantly saying to me? What's my family constantly saying to me? And it might be as simple as, Mama's not going to let you leave home and you're 56 and you're like, I didn't realize she's always going to make me her baby. I have to make a choice around this. That's going to be huge, as you can imagine.
Yes.
Or vice versa, I've been looking after Mama since I was 15, and she's never going to change her behaviour. What do I do? How do I manage that? So it comes in, and this is what I find so fascinating, it comes in 1,000 different ways. People are always saying, what does your average debtor look like? And I go, stressed. They often haven't had very good dental work. They often need their eyes testing. Basic human needs they haven't taken care of, even though thousands are going through their accounts.
It's almost, as you say, it's almost like they get themselves into a circle, don't they? And it's very difficult to get out.
It is very difficult to get out in one way, and in another way, it's actually really straightforward. But you've got to have that, I'm not going to borrow again, and see what happens. I'll show, this is my attitude, I'll show that Mr. Mundus in his book that I'm not the one at fault. I'll follow what he says and I'll prove it. And actually the opposite happened.
Yeah. And do you think you'll do another book at all, Sabrina? Do you think there's another book coming?
I've got about 5 at least in me, but I'm very dyslexic. So what I need really is someone to help me. This one took forever because it was like edit, because, and I've tried to make it all full of information. because you probably come across this as a fat person. I would buy these huge great tomes and find 2/3 were like, did you know fat wasn't very good for you? And you're like, I want the meat. I want to know how I move forward from this situation. And that's what I've tried to do right in the beginning. I've put in the pledge, and the pledge is I will not under any circumstances borrow anything ever again. And from that point, I promise you, the world wants to support you to be fabulous. And you can't if you keep borrowing. You just can't.
And what's next for you then, Sabrina? So obviously you'd like to do a lot more, which would be amazing. I think people would really welcome you, particularly at this time, because we are going into a recession, as they keep telling us, and people are very worried and concerned about their money. What do you think? Just before I leave you, sort of just give me a couple of tips you think that people should do right this moment now if they're watching this and thinking, I recognise what this lady's saying.
Freeze your debt. Write down everything you spend, like literally everything, as much detail as possible, and be consistent. All those 3 things to us are just like, But yeah, write everything down, and then gradually, bit by bit, you'll start to work out, how come I'm spending £50 on, takeout coffee, and I can't make the extra on the electricity or the gas bill? I get this all the time.
It's basic stuff, really, isn't it? It's the basic, how am I living my life, and let's just prioritize almost, really. But it's been fascinating to talk to you, Sabrina. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. And obviously people can find you. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And they can find you, of course, on Amazon, where your book is selling there. And if they could Google your name, they'll find you there. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Lovely, Monica.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Right, we're going to take another break, so stay with me and come back and join me where my next guest, I've got 2 lovely guests joining me just after the break. See you in a minute. Bye-bye. Welcome back after the break. I'm now delighted to be joined by Dr. Aamer Khan and Lesley Reynolds, who are joining me from the Harley Street Skin Clinic in Harley Street, London. Welcome to you both.
Lovely to be here, and thank you for having us.
Thank you, Monica.
Welcome.
Nice
Lovely to see you. And we were just chatting in the break, actually, weren't we? Just about really how medicine's changing and how you play a part in that. But let's really, first of all, let's just tell people what you do. So Aamer, would you like to start off? How would you like to describe what you do at your clinic?
Well, I do what I'm told.
So that's not a good start, is it?
Definitely not true.
We've got a clinic in Harley Street.
Yes.
And the clinic mainly provides cosmetic and aesthetic services. And over the years, we've been around for how long now?
Nearly 20 years.
Yeah. So over the last 20 years, what we've realized is that along with looking good, people also want to feel good as well. It's no good looking young and your body working at a much older sort of level. So more and more people, we're talking about integrated medicine, we're talking about regenerative medicine and wellness. And I think all of them come together to give us a quality of life. So we can then position cosmetics where it should be as part of the overall picture.
Yes, I mean, that's it in a nutshell, isn't it? But for Lesley, how about for you? Because you're a columnist as well, aren't you? And you were a star in the Sky programme, weren't you? What was the name of that programme now?
Stitch Me, Lift Me, Tuck Me.
That's it.
We didn't choose the name.
Yes. We won't talk about the name.
No.
But again, I think we've moved on from there, haven't we? I think, as you say, Dr. Khan, it's a very, people now are looking for the whole package, aren't they? So when they come to you, was that kind of was it something that you identified just from your years in practice, or were the clients actually asking for you, of you, so to speak?
Both things, isn't it? Really?
It's a bit of both.
Yeah.
And I guess it's a bit of an evolution of what we were doing. When we started, it was just purely non-surgical, how cosmetic treatments have evolved. Lesley describes it beautifully. Right at the beginning, there was either a cream or surgery, and that was it. There was no choice in between. And over the years, as technology improves, as our knowledge of what we're doing in this very new field, even though we've been doing it for 20 years, it's a new field of medicine, and we're still learning and we're progressing and getting better in it.
I think also what really happened for us was a lot of our clients have been with us for a long year. Well, probably 20 years. I mean, we've been seeing people in Harley Street for 20 years, but before that, I was seeing people as a beauty therapist and for skincare. And because people stayed with us and we saw them getting older, we noticed that actually cosmetic treatments were fine, but they were finding it really hard to get up out of the chair, or maybe they had some depression issues, or they lost a partner, all sorts of things. And we realized that actually everything that shows on the outside is coming from inside. And so what we tried to do, and what we've tried to develop, and I think have successfully now developed, is a whole program for people to be able to be well on the inside as well as the outside. So you can look fabulous, but you can also get up and dance and be happy and enjoy yourself. You can meditate, you can feel better. So it's very integrated, isn't it?
Yeah,
it is. And I think beauty is more about that now, isn't it? The beauty industry, because it's so difficult to find somebody who is qualified and competent sometimes, because there's so many, as you're probably aware, that the clinics where they're not licensed, they do treatments where they cause harm, and then they probably go to somebody like yourselves to try and correct those treatments. And all this has a terrible bearing on their mental health, doesn't it?
Of course. And when Lesley talks about inner health and well-being, it's not just about our medical health, it's about our mental health, our nutritional health, our spiritual health. All of these things come together to make a well person. It's not just one thing. So when we talk about integrative medicine and an integrative approach, and this is where Lee comes in on the spiritual side when he works with us. So we're open to working with experts in different fields, in nutrition and nutritional well-being and nutrigenomics and nutrinomics, as well as I come from a health background, so I understand that that the health issues are not necessarily a disease process, but a symptom of aging and a symptom of everything else that's going on. And if we were only to treat that, we'd just be treating the symptom and not the cause.
Yes, yeah. And have you seen a huge change in the years that you've started your practice? Has there been a total change, or what's been happening in your industry?
Well, I think the bad side of it is there are so many unqualified people offering treatments, and there are so many bad treatments available. I think the good side is that we've developed in a way that is not just about having cosmetic treatments. It's about treating you as the whole thing, and be able to say to people, this surgery is not going to actually make you happy. It's not actually going to make you feel that much better. What we've got to get to is the root cause, and that's what we do a lot of the time.
Yeah. I mean, most people come to see us because they're dissatisfied about something. They don't just walk through the door because they're happy and there's nothing wrong with their lives.
There's a few lines that we want to...
Yeah, but it's not just about the lines, it's about how they feel about the lines. So there's always a psychological aspect to why people are coming in. There's a realization of the aging process, and we can embrace that, or we can choose to do something about that. But people do come in because there is something that they're not satisfied about. So, from the outset, we're dealing with the psychology of the person who is dissatisfied. And what they want to do is they want to bring that dissatisfaction to you, and I'm sure you see this as well, and say, make me happy, make me satisfied.
That's right, yes.
And we can't always do that,
it's very difficult.
So that's the start of the discussion, really. And we consult them fully. We spend at least half an hour to an hour with them, just learning about them, about their health, about how they live, all the different aspects we talked about before that contribute to wellness. We talk about that, and we start to put a picture together.
I mean, we do see people as well that come in that are perfectly happy. Just want a little tiny bit of Botox or something, bigger lips or something. But mainly I think it's always about what's going on inside, whether it's your gut health, whether it's your mental health. You need some help, and that's what we're here to provide.
I mean, and do you find post-COVID, you found more people coming to you and you're almost becoming a sort of a therapist, so to speak?
Yes.
Because, you know,
I think
that was
yes,
happening.
yeah.
Yeah, it was happening
Yeah.
before COVID as well.
It was happening before COVID, but it's certainly worse, I think, now. And during COVID, we did a lot of online consultations. People would be very lonely. And I think there was a lot of mental health issues at that time because people need people and you need somebody. And if you can't actually, if you live alone, you can't see somebody, talk to them, touch somebody, it's very hard, isn't it?
It is. And it's a loss, isn't it? Because
Yes.
part of the sort of the whole mental health of the nation is linked into that loss. And, you know, we've all lost something during COVID. We may have lost loved ones. We may have lost time, the connection with other people.
That's a big thing, I think.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the biggest things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's this sense of loss. We may have lost jobs. We may have lost, you know, lost businesses. So there's a huge amount of loss over this time. And I think, you know, to understand that and also to understand that we're not the only ones feeling that, everybody else is as well. That shared experience and that knowledge that everybody's been through it makes it a little bit easier. And, you know, and our goal over the period was to reach out to people. We did lots of webinars and things.
Yeah.
I was going to say, did you host webinars during that time?
We hosted them and we were guests on webinars just to share that experience and also to share some knowledge from a medical perspective, so people didn't feel as though they were in the dark all the time. They didn't know what was happening or they didn't understand what was being told to them.
And also, I think just to communicate with people, just to have a chat.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. So that was really important. I think just having somebody there to talk to.
Yeah.
And as humans, we like to engage, don't we? We like to do that. Yeah.
Absolutely. But one of the things we found was that because people were engaging via this sort of media, you don't just see the person you're talking to, but you see yourself as well. And more people began to realise, hang on a minute, I've got fat cheeks or a saggy neck.
Face.
Yeah.
So
they started coming in with Zoom face syndrome.
But it's true, though. It's true. I think we all sort of took a look at ourselves more, and that there's certainly been some studies on that as well. And it's true. You know, people have been looking at themselves and finding out what they've been doing. And did you see a sort of an influx once the COVID, you know, we came out of the pandemic and we were able to come to you? Did you see an increase in your services?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And mainly it was faces, but also weight, because people hadn't been doing very much. They'd been eating for comfort. So
I think we're all there.
2 or 3 stone. Yeah. So yes.
Yes, it is.
I don't think we had a single person who came in and said, I've lost weight and I look more beautiful. Did we?
Yeah.
Well, one or two.
One or two, maybe.
People started to exercise. Yeah.
Yes, they did. And some people did more exercise. And this was one of the topics that I covered on one of the webinars where I was a guest on a radio station. And we were talking about, you know, not over exercising because people went crazy and there were more injuries and we couldn't access the health services. So people were finding that, you know, they started exercising where they hadn't exercised before. They were overstressing their bodies. They got tendon injuries, muscular injuries, which then stopped them from exercising. So that fed into that sort of mental health state of isolation, that, you know, there wasn't the support there, that they couldn't, if, you know, I've got back pain now or I've pulled a muscle, I can't see a doctor. So, you know,
it was a very difficult time, wasn't it? So, you know, for everybody really. But listen, we've got to take a quick break, but stay right with me and come back and join me just after the break. Welcome back to Late Nights with Monica Price, and I'm delighted we're speaking with Dr. Aamer Khan and Lesley Reynolds, who are at the Harley Street Skin Clinic in Harley Street, London. Hello, we've been talking just before the break about the effects the COVID had on the NHS, and as we was just discussing, you know, they were over exercising, and, you know, we were told to kind of stop that, but now we're kind of out of it. How do you see sort of the future of your clinic? I mean, tell me about Ballingdon Hall, for instance. I've heard about this wonderful Ballingdon Hall, and it's in Suffolk, I believe.
It is. It's in Suffolk.
Yes.
It's a beautiful Tudor mansion with 21 acres of ground, and we were looking for something during COVID, surprisingly
Yes.
enough, because we decided that, yeah, I know, crazy, but we decided that we wanted to open a retreat because so many people were so lonely, they were so down, there were mental health issues, and we wanted to encompass the whole person in one place. So we do have a medical clinic there where you can actually have Botox and fillers and treatments, but also we've got lots of retreats that we do with spiritual people like Lee from Wellness.
Yes, who
we
I've had
do
on my show, of
meditation.
course. Yes.
Yeah, he's lovely. So he does retreats there where he helps people to develop psychically, just to meditate, all sorts of things. But also, Dr. Khan does a lot of gut health because we're great believers in getting your guts right.
Yeah, so getting gut health, nutrition. We've got a really switched on chef who works with us, and he works on the nutritional side. So you know, we do a lot of sort of nutritional work with people, helping them to make more intelligent and better decisions about their nutrition and about what they're eating and how they plan it.
Yes.
But one of the things that we are doing is at Ballingdon is we want to be self-sufficient.
Right.
So we've created a kitchen garden which we're developing, and it should be ready by the end of the year.
Yeah, we should be self-sufficient with our vegetables and fruit by January.
Oh,
so
I'm coming down.
And we've got our own water there.
Yeah, we've got our own
that's
water
amazing.
supply.
Oh, it's like the good
fabulous.
life. It's just like the good life.
It's just like
It's just like the good life. I'm loving it.
most of your listeners aren't going to remember that, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, but I don't remember it. We don't remember that program.
No, we don't.
I do.
We have it. But, you know, it's a wonderful thing, though. And I think people aren't they? They're becoming more spiritual. They are becoming more aware of themselves. They're not just looking at the physical appearance. They are looking at how much energy they've got when they wake up in the morning and how they feel at the end of that day. So I'm totally in agreement there with you. But it takes time, doesn't it? And not everybody knows which direction they should go. So do you help people kind of steer them in the right direction?
But a lot of it is about education, and I think the whole basis of medicine and teaching and what we do is about education. And our approach to cosmetics and to aesthetics is also about talking to patients, educating them about, okay, the aging process, and this is to be expected, but also what can be done and what's available. And once they understand not just what's available and what can be done, but also the limitations and the advantages of the different treatments, they can make an intelligent decision. And it's the same with wellness and with how we live in our lives. If we can help to educate people at their point of understanding, you know, not too technical, but just get that message across, then they can make their own decisions, and then they can keep on making the right decisions.
It's, as you say, it's giving them choices, isn't it?
It is.
And are you finding, Lesley, that people are coming to you, are getting younger, particularly for beauty treatments? I wanted to just touch on that because obviously we see all the magazines, you know, the newspapers, and we're surrounded now by, you know, YouTubers and influencers who are very young and are already having cosmetic surgery. Just give me your thoughts on that.
Well, I mean, I see people, very, very young girls actually, who want to have lip fillers and Botox. And I mean, it is up to our industry to say no, really, and say you don't need it yet, and there are other things that you can do. So we tend to always, well, I always like to start with the skin and say your skin's the biggest organ on your body. It's something you've got to think about first. So we get the skin right first. So we would probably spend, you know, 6 to 12 weeks really getting somebody's skin into much better condition. Once they're there, very often they don't want to have any treatment because when they've got a glow and the skin's looking good, they're very happy.
Yes, yeah.
So, but I think
back to education, isn't it? Back to education, really.
Yeah, I think they are starting very young. However, I do see a lot of people in their late 20s who've been backpackers, so they've been to Australia or, you know, Far East, never used any sunscreen in their late teens, early 20s, and they are very sun damaged. So again, it's getting their skin into good working order, making them look fresher. I mean, the best thing you can have is a glow, isn't it, for your skin?
Yes, that's absolutely. And it's all about, as you say, goes back to what we were saying, education, making sure that people have got some informed choices and then giving them the choice.
But also on this point, you know, when we treat sun damaged skin and it looks better looking skin is healthier skin, because sun damage is causing DNA damage, which increases not just your risk of aging, but of the different age-related skin conditions like pre-cancerous change and cancerous change. So, you know, addressing the skin also has a medical benefit to our patients.
I think also telling the client or the patient that as well, and explaining to them this is what it can lead to, will actually make them help themselves more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
It's keeping people on the straight and narrow, though. That's really hard.
Yes.
So some people get their skin
I
looking
think because we
lovely.
have so many choices, don't we? Nowadays we do. Maybe we have too much choice, and then when people come to you, they may have
It's
seen something.
confusing.
Do people come to you, for instance, Dr. Khan, and say, "Oh, I've seen this in a magazine, and I want to look like her"?
Yes.
Yeah. And that's the other thing that we do, and we are very aware of, that people come to look like somebody who they either idolize or they think that, oh, they look happy, you know, in what they're doing, and if I look like them, I might feel like them, and that's really not going to happen. And you know, because of the media and the representation of the changing face of beauty within the media, you know, now we're looking at big lips and things like that, and people want that because they think. And there was a time when people wanted big buttocks, and that's coming full circle now. We're seeing people who want to reduce that.
I've written 2 columns recently for different magazines about how things are going back to being natural.
Yes.
So I think it's really important that we do talk about it in the media, and we're fortunate that we've got 3 columns in national newspapers and magazines, so we can actually talk about, you want to look like yourself, not somebody else, and you want to look as natural and as beautifully natural for you. You want to be you, don't you?
Exactly. I think there's a lot of pressure, don't you think, Debbie? There's a lot of pressure, Lesley, on you know, how people are looking, especially on the young people. You know, how they always want to look like these glamour models in the magazines, and as we all know, it's not achievable. These people have makeup artists every second. They have people that do their hair. You know, they'll have, you know, nutritionists. They might have a chef. So it's unachievable, really. But what do you say to girls that come to you, you know, with those kind of aspirations?
Well, I say, here's a mirror. Have a look in it. You're very beautiful.
Yes,
and I say, have you realised?
absolutely.
Does your mother not say to you, you know, you're a beautiful girl. Why do you want to do this? But you see, social media has got a lot to play on this, where they're always taking photos, being photographed. So. But I'm very much into telling people, you know, you look lovely, and you do look beautiful, and you have got lovely eyes. And I think you should compliment people, because not enough people do.
Yeah, the other thing is our whole lives are lived through and recorded on social media now. And a lot of the recording devices, like our phones, you know, that we record on, have filters. So that's not how we really look. That's a filtered vision of ourselves, and then when we look in the mirror, we don't look like our, you know, social media picture, and that's what people are aspiring to.
It's quite nice sometimes.
We like it sometimes, but again, it's having that balance, isn't it? It's having that balance and understanding. Look, this is a filter. This is not real life. I'm not going to look like this when I walk out of the shower in the morning. You know, this is taking makeup and a filter to look this good, and it's having that understanding. And again, it's telling people that you've got a choice. You know, we can make you look like this, but these are the sort of repercussions of it.
Well, you can't make somebody look like a gorgeous. We always say to them, you will never look like this because you're not that person. You will look like the best version of you, and that's all you can really hope to get, isn't it?
Yes,
and
absolutely.
One of the mistakes that some people do make is to change the way that they look, because there will come a time where they won't want that, because fashions will change, and the desired look will change. And if you're somebody who is driven by looking like the current desired look, you're going to run into problems. It'll be surgery after surgery, and it's going to start looking odd. So it really is it's incumbent upon us as medical practitioners to help and guide people from that perspective. And we take that really seriously.
Yeah, we do. And aging, I think, is another huge thing, where women come in and may have a gorgeous daughter who's, you know, 25, and they say, I used to look like that. And that's another thing that I think is really reminder. It is, but I think it's really important to say, but you're still beautiful now, and you're never going to look 25 again. So don't you look amazing for your age, and let's keep you looking amazing. And again, a lot of that is about skin.
And I think the more important aspect to that, if we turn it around, is that daughter should look at her mother and say, you look amazing for your age, I'm going to look like you when I get there. And that should be a positive, because that's where they're heading. You know, the mother isn't heading back to the daughter is heading towards the mother. And
they don't think they are, but they are. But it's true though, isn't it? And finally, just before I say goodbye to you, it's a fascinating conversation. From a beauty perspective, because you see many clients of all ages, from all demographics, how do you see the future of the beauty industry?
I think that we are going to get into a lot of regenerative medicine. I think that what we're talking about, what comes from inside, really help you, and your own cells can help you. I think that's the real future.
Yeah.
And I think we're there to really help people to find their best self, rather than this real plastic fantastic look.
Yeah. And from a cosmetic and aesthetic perspective,
Yes.
I think people starting, at a younger age, but with skincare and with the right sort of guidance, they can keep looking good rather than waiting until everything falls apart. And then the only thing that puts it back is surgery. You've gone too far. So looking after yourself, being aware of sun damage, pollution damage, environmental damage, stress damage, nutritional damage, poor nutrition damage, all of that as part of the regenerative side of things can help you keep at your best. So all we need to do are little tweaks here and there to keep them really good.
Absolutely agree. And we do less and less surgery all the time.
Yeah,
So
that's wonderful. Well, listen, it's been fascinating. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining me this evening. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show.
Lovely
to meet you, Monica.
Thank you so much. Right,
Bye.
that's it for this week. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you very much for my guests for joining me this evening. Come back and join me again next week. Take care. Bye-bye.